that's been very complicated, more complicated than it needed to be. So what every politician does, we literally scrape the information from each parliamentary website and we gather it together in a standard format. We use what's called the Populo standard, which just describes each politician and the information about them in a kind of standard way everywhere. So we use tools like gender balance when we want to add male-female on top of that. But it's by having one standard way of gathering this information, it means that anybody, anywhere, could create tools using this information, and they can be confident that the information is going to be the same in every country. So if you create a tool in Chile, you could probably use it in Georgia, or potentially the United Kingdom, or France, or so on and so forth. And actually for Glow Week, we've been trying to get 200 legislatures scraped, and I'm glad to say, if you could actually flip back to the internet, please. I think last night,
internet is not.
Could you go back to the website, please? Thank you. So there we go. Last night we actually hit 201 countries so far. We actually went from 199 to 201. We had North Korea and Sweden were the last two countries. I wouldn't read too much into that. It was just the order they happened. Okay, it seems to be, maybe we'll just go back to the presentation, should be fine. It's okay. Here we go. Let's see. Georgia. There we go. So as you can see, I'm not going to go into this information, but we have literally a list of every politician. That in itself is very basic, but anybody can download this information about any parliament. It's available in CSV format and JSON format, so it's very usable in lots of different applications. You don't need to worry about the technology. Again, the technology is the easy bit. If you could just go back to the presentation, sorry. So, there we go. The information is available in kind of long form. So on the website, you see the summary information, but there's a real long string of very detailed information about every politician. And again, it's in a standard format. We can add to it in a common way, and everyone can be sure they can use that information wherever they need to. So as I said, we've just hit 201 countries as of last night, and we'll continue to do that until we've covered every country with a government in the world. And then over the next few years, we'll continue to add to that information, and other people can add to that information as well. And for mySociety's work, we use this in a number of different ways. On the left, there's a website called yournextmp.org, which we used in the general election in the United Kingdom earlier this year. We're also rolling that service out to a number of other countries. Again, all of this code is available open source, so anyone can use it. Some of my colleagues on stage already work with some of this software, and we work with their software as well. There's also on the right-hand side, you see a website called theyworkforyou.org, which is our parliamentary monitoring site. You maybe noticed the chap Jeremy Corbyn, who's making some headlines. In the UK, he's just taken over as Labour leader. And it's just a really useful way to actually go and see one place where this politician, to see his voting record and where he's departed from his party previously. In the case of Jeremy Corbyn, that's over 500 times in the past 30 years or so. So anyway, common data, same format everywhere, encourage others to build tools on top of it. So it's a very simple but ambitious project, but when the data is consistent and structured, it can be used by developers everywhere who can then concentrate on making the tools rather than worrying about the kind of different data sets. Importantly, this information can then be, once it's collated together, it can be matched up with other interesting data sets where you're looking at issues around your ownership of companies, kind of previous employment history and so on. So lots of different tools can take advantage of this. They can be easily picked up, adapted to local needs. So this is the Every Politician project. It's one of a number of projects that mySociety is involved in. I encourage you to have a look, make sure the data is consistent, and if you feel there's any errors, let us know and we'll make sure it's changed. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, next presenter from Czech Republic, Michal Škop. Please, and you need the remote.
Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Michal Škop. I'm from an NGO called KohoVolit.eu, or Whom to Vote For in English. And I come from the Czech Republic. Our organization does a lot of analysis of parliamentary work or other analysis, but I will talk about the parliament, because we are in the parliament anyway. And I will try to show you some exciting way how to present parliamentary data. As I said, I come from the Czech Republic. You may know it. Czech Republic has very strong beer culture. You know, you go to a pub very often. And when I go to the pub, because of course I'm supposed to go to the pub because I'm from the Czech Republic, I talk to the people, and they ask me, what do you do? Okay, I'm working with parliamentary data. I'm doing analysis of parliaments and visualization of the parliament. Well, and some people say, parliament, you know, aren't all the MPs the same? You know, they don't care about us, they care about their money maybe, their salary. Or others say, oh, parliamentary information, come on, it's not for us, it's some boring stuff. And maybe you've heard something similar as well. It's not maybe only in Czech pubs. But I must say they are wrong. Because if we have the data from the parliament, we can do very simple analysis like this one, which is right here. This is just probably the most simple analysis from parliament, and we were just showing this in an article in a big news portal in the Czech Republic, and we were showing who is going from the MPs, who goes to the parliament and who doesn't. And even from this basic chart, the red ones are from the government, and the gray ones are the other MPs. Even from this one, you see, no, all the MPs are not the same. There are differences. And even such simple thing can show to the people that, okay, there are some guys who don't go to the parliament at all, or almost at all. So probably next time think about voting for somebody else. But we can go further. This was really a simple example. This is an example of an application. It's a test for the users, for people, and we call it election calculator. But you may know similar application from other countries. It's a Valomat in Germany. I cite this in the US. I saw Media Naranja in Chile. And in this particular application, we put some 20 questions, but in this case, we put questions which were really voted in a parliament. In this case, this is from European Parliament. And the user answered the same question which were really voted in last year in the European Parliament in this case. So the user sits at his computer or takes his mobile and see, oh, okay, do you agree with the introduction of mandatory quotas for refugees? It's an important topic. It was voted last week in the European Parliament. And he selects or she selects yes, no, I don't care. And at the end, after the 20 questions, you get some nice overview of the matches with the members of the parliament. So actually, you can see who is your MP really, who votes the same way as you would have voted if you were an MP. So this is a very simple application, even if it has something really behind it. And surprise, 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 we got millions of users of such applications. Imagine our country has 10 million people and 5 million voters, let's say, go to vote. So it's a lot. And people, the users, spend maybe 10 minutes on our application, and they go really through the work which happened in the parliament. And it's not boring stuff, because if you spend 10 minutes on an application, it's on the internet. If it was boring, then you would just click away. You don't spend 5 seconds if there is something boring on the internet. So this application is really good, really powerful, and actually a simple way how to show what's happening in the parliament to people, that they can play with it and see how the MPs are voting, whether it's for them or against them. But if we have the data, which we do in the Czech Republic, we may not have in other countries, we may go even further and do some really sophisticated analysis. But still we can show it to people. And I'll take a minute to explain this chart. It's, again, example from the Czech Republic, but we do this analysis for many countries, including Chile or Brazil. So every dot here is one MP. It represents one MP. The color is based on the party, and the distances are how they vote. If people, the MPs, vote together, they are close together. If they vote differently, they are far away. So you see there is a block of the left parties. In Czech case, it's the communists and the socialists. And on the other hand, you see the block of the right parties, which vote together, and they form the government at that time. And you may see, those two little small dots. There were two MPs who were elected for the Socialist Party, but then said, okay, well, we will support the government just for a while, but we are still, left MPs. We vote on the left topics, and we want, the left. And if I may have the video, we can do even video from it. We can move the world a bit. We can show how this is changing through the time. So you see, this is now going through the time, and you see those two green dots. They were actually left, but they really went to the right. You see, and voted with the right parties. You see, they were somehow trying to go back. There are two different ones. Whether they go back to right or to the left, well, that's the question. And you see, well, at the end, actually, they ended on the right side. And you can have it in the replay. Yeah, that's nice. It's like, sport game, actually. You got your replay there. And great. And again, yes, I go through it. And again, this is a kind of analysis. It's actually quite sophisticated. In like there is mathematics behind it even, and a lot of numbers. I show, you know, it's maybe 1 million of numbers I showed you just now. And again, I am able to show this kind of analysis in that pub to my countrymen, you know, fellow countrymen. And it's quite exciting that if I take time to explain this analysis, which, okay, I did just in 20 seconds now, but okay, if I take time, I can explain it to the guy sitting and drinking beer with me, even after second or third beer. Okay, after fifth, you know, it's too much even for me, but it's possible. And so to finish it somehow, I would say, no, you know, the data, the information from the parliament, it's exciting if we do it right, if we show it right. And so just if we have the data, or if people have the data, we can do it. You know, these were just simple examples how to do it. So just have the data, liberate the data from the parliament, and all the MPs are not the same. And it's not boring stuff. You know, we have MPs here from Chile, and they are not the same because they are here. They are interested what's happening in the world. So they are not the same. And so just it's not a boring stuff, and they are not the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Michal. Well, you're lucky that you have only two politicians that they're not that strong on their political grounds. We wish to have less than that. Well, we have next Lex Paulson, who will present this D21 program that will help politicians to keep their hand on the pulse of the voters. So.
Thanks. Thank you, David. Thank you all for being here. I want to talk about information. And we've been this morning hearing about tools that help the public get information from you. How does this thing advance? This thing. Down.
Scroll down.
Great. I want to tell you about how you can also get the best information from the public. I've worked in politics for a long time. Politics is very often a race for information. Government works better. Politicians succeed more when you have richest sources of information. So I'm going to talk to you about a tool that can help you get better information to make better decisions. Information problem in politics is that most politicians get their information the same way. I know what the people think, right? Trusting your gut. I've been around politics a long time. I talk to a lot of people. The problem is that trusting your gut is always about what you learned in the past. Technology allows us to understand with ever greater precision and speed what people are thinking now. And knowing what people are thinking now is going to help you make better decisions for what's about to happen. You also, of course, have the chance to get information from people in person, but how do you really know that a meeting or the people who show up to a public hearing are representative of what the larger community thinks? It's difficult to know. Sometimes you have people who are extreme voices or more obsessed with one part of the problem, and you're not hearing from the majority of people. So how can you deal with that? And then thirdly, we have polls. Politicians, of course, are obsessed with polls, but polling has a big weakness. Two big weaknesses, really. The first is that it's a blunt instrument in terms of the information you get. The way polls are generally asked is, you have one choice among several choices. Do you like this? Do you not like this? Do you like this person? Do you not like this person? Which of these four things should we do? And you can only choose one. The other weakness is that it's only a one-sided conversation. Maybe you think the poll isn't framed the right way, or maybe you think that the public doesn't quite understand what the committee is working on, or what the real issues are at stake. So how do you create a dialogue that really allows the information to go in two directions? So what if you had access to a tool that you could build an information-rich, trustworthy dialogue with citizens at a very large scale and in real time? Well, that's what D21 has built, and that's what we want to share with you. And to illustrate the core of our approach to voting and to polling, I'll give you just a very short example. Imagine there are 7 members of a parliament trying to choose how to spend a budget of $1 million. And as we know with budgets, there are always trade-offs. And say there's a fireman who wants to fix the fire station and a senior citizen who cares about the old folks' home. And these are all nice, good, moderate projects and options. But at the end, you see at the bottom, there are 2 lawyers. And what the lawyers really want are VIP parking for their SUVs. Now, in a simple single-vote system, who wins? Well, even though the VIP parking is not an option that has a lot of consensus behind it, because you have these 2 MPs who really care about just that, and everyone else, their votes are scattered through other options, in a one-vote system, the least, it could be the least favorite option actually wins. Now, it's fair. Everyone has 1 vote. But is this really the best result? Well, this is how we vote today. We often vote just using 1 vote. Well, why are we settling for that? Just imagine in this situation, instead of 1 vote, everyone had 2 votes. And so, in addition to every MP voting for their favorite project, they could just vote for one other one in addition. Now you see, just with the effect of adding 1 more vote into the conversation, you've radically changed the consensus, the level of consensus. The same voters, the same preferences, the same options, but you have a different winner. In this case, it could be the kindergarten, which has now 4 voters behind it instead of the VIP parking with 2. Just by changing the mechanism, you've changed the outcome and you've improved the consensus around the outcome. Now imagine if in addition to having this 1 extra vote, you could also cast a vote against an option that you didn't like. So 2 votes for options you liked, and a 3rd vote against an option you didn't like. Right? And you see that the VIP parking, which in the 1-vote system is the winner, if you give more options to the MPs, more options to the participants, more flexibility, you see so much more information. You see actually that the VIP parking was the least favorite option, and the kindergarten has the most consensus. So this is how D21 generates consensus in its votes and in its polls. This D21 algorithm was created 2 years ago by this man, Karl Janeček, who is a mathematician from the Czech Republic, who was a successful businessman in the world of algorithmic finance, and then applied his talents and his resources in the Czech Republic to the problem of corruption, and founded a foundation against corruption to protect whistleblowers, and created the D21 voting system as a way of fighting corruption and giving voters more motivation and more options. So the original idea was about how to fix politics and the election system. But as we started talking about this idea, we realized that there were many different kinds of decisions and many different kinds of information exchanges in politics that D21 could potentially transform or potentially improve. So the 2 elements of the D21 system, very simple. The more votes than winners. So in this case, the effect of more votes of giving people 2 or 3 or 4 votes, usually in a ratio of 2 to 1. And then the option of having both minus votes and plus votes. There are some instances where you don't want to have minus votes. The minus vote is an optional feature of the system, but it can be really revealing of people's preferences. And as we saw in the Parliament example, this rewards consensus over the more extreme options. From the voters' point of view, they have more flexibility. They aren't trapped into choosing the lesser evil. And with the help of technology, we can also lower the barriers of participation so that more and more people are involved in the conversation. So just in the last 12 months, we've had the chance to test this approach to voting in a wide range of political decision-making processes. In New York City, with the participatory budgeting vote, this is the largest in America, where citizens were asked to help just choose where $32 million of public money would be spent. In Paris, as part of a simulation for the upcoming UN climate negotiations, we created and deployed polls of the delegates in real time. And in Tunisia, we're working with a bit of a lower tech approach with pen and paper and with registering data on computers to do participatory budgeting in cities where there's never been a citizen dialogue with local government before. More examples, we tested this with also 11,000 Czech voters in the largest political science experiment in Czech history. So a lot of data to show that voters really like having this chance to respond to questions with more votes, more options. And we've tested also with foundations, with NGOs, with universities in places as far afield as China, New York City, Portugal, and the Czech Republic. So what does our platform do? So today you can go on to d21.me and create your own polls. I'm going to show you very quickly how it works. And we have two types of polls that you can create. Anyone in this room can do it starting today. First is a quick poll, where you can just very, very easily and simply choose, create a set of options, invite people to vote, put it on your Facebook page, put it on your Twitter page, and share it quickly and get information back quickly. And then there's an advanced poll, which allows you to build more information into the poll, so you're both educating as well as learning about people's platforms. So I'm just going to show quickly on the internet, if that's okay. We can go to, okay. So here is here's the front page of d21.me. You can create an account, it's free. You can start using it today if you'd like to. This is still an early phase of our platform is sort of in beta testing, so we'll be launching it with all the functionalities in about a month and a half, but you can go on the site today and see. So if you just want to create a poll, it's as simple as clicking this button, asking the question, setting what the options are. And so, for example, I created a poll. Say you're the head of a political party in Georgia or in Chile, and you just want to know what are people talking about this week. Right? You can very quickly set a set of options. Is it the basketball game versus Lithuania? Is it the new unemployment report? Is it the flood? Is it teacher salaries with the start of the year? And then the voters get to choose two, in this case, two that are relevant to them, things that, yes, we're talking about that where we live, and one that, no one's talking about that. And so you can share this on Facebook, you can invite people to vote by email, and very quickly, you can have a conversation at scale very cheaply and very quickly. That's a quick poll. And with the advanced poll, so for example, say you're the chairman of the economics committee for the Georgian parliament. Well, you're debating different ways to create jobs in Georgia. So here we see how in an advanced poll you have the chance to add a lot of extra information for the public to inform themselves about what the committee is doing. So for example, how do we strengthen development of the Georgian wine sector? So in this case, what the public sees is not just the name of the option, but you can have pictures, you can have information about Georgia's wine industry and text, you can have links to articles, again, make the information flow in both directions. So the public is learning about what government is doing before they're giving their preferences. And you can add little videos, you can translate in different languages, etc. And so, thank you very much. I'll go back to the presentation.
Takes 1 minute.
Fine. So, and at the end, what you get is a much richer amount of data. So, for example, you can see you can ask voters where they are coming from, where do they live, and you can see how people have chosen things differently based on different parts of the country, different neighborhoods in a city. You can also see things like mode of transportation and what we call the satisfaction index, which measures the number of people in the poll who have chosen a winning option. So if you have a 48% satisfaction index, that means that 48% of the people ended up choosing the winning option. And you can see how that varies, how that goes up and down. In this case, based on, we were using this poll to choose how to renovate a public square. And it was very different depending on people who preferred bicycles, who preferred going on foot, who preferred cars. So how can you use this? Government. This should be a two-way conversation. You can use this to help educate your voters and your constituents about your policies and progress. You can use it to find this deeper level of information, not just the simple one-word answer, but a one-sentence answer from voters about what they feel. You can react quicker. And this helps build a dialogue of trust and respect between the people who you need to be involved in good government. For NGOs in the room, this is a tool that we can work together with you to use to communicate with your membership network, to get data from the public about your issues that then you can use to advocate in front of parliaments and government, and to conduct business remotely. You can create polls to do routine business or elect members of a committee in your NGO from your smartphone. We want to give this away. So we're here in Georgia to find new partners. We're a philanthropic project. So if you are interested in using this, you can go and create polls today on d21.me. You can also work together directly with us to customize and adapt this for your government, for your committees, for your NGOs. And we're very interested in testing and refining and building long-term collaboration. So if this is something that's interesting to you, please come and talk to me, and we'll talk about how you might be able to use it in your country to help solve your information problems and build a better democracy. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Lex. We will have next Eric Barrett. Where is Eric? Yes, from the Georgian JumpStart. So,
yes.
Welcome, please.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Eric Barrett. I work here in Tbilisi, and I work and collaborate with a wide variety of actors. And what we do is we like to tell stories. Storytelling is a very integral part of our work. However, we tell stories in the 21st century. I often like to think about 5,000 years ago or older, how Georgians would, at the dawn of their creating wine here in the region, what kinds of stories they would like to tell around the fire. And then I jump back to the 21st century, and I think about how complicated things have become. And boy, have they become complicated. The stories that we tell today are grounded in complicated processes. And these processes are complicated in a way in which it's not just about asking a series of random questions. They're large, they're nationwide, they're processes, they're trends, they're mechanisms. And to understand these, we need information. And more specifically, we need data. So, down. Okay, I'm not. Can you show me?
Yeah, scroll down.
Okay, there we go. And for storytelling to matter, and the storytelling that we tell each other, the stories that we tell each other, the things that we talk about over coffee, the things that we talk about around the fire, they matter because they matter to us as individuals. But they become important to us because we understand our place in the larger context. And a good story is something that says, hi, this is about you, but this is why it matters. This is why this is important. This is why you should care about this story. And for us to understand these complicated processes, we need the information. That information needs to be open. And this gathering is about that. It's about parliamentary openness. It's about openness. It's about understanding, being able to understand the processes and trends that matter to us. But in the 21st century, like I said, it's not just about information maybe on TV or information on the radio. It's about data, because in order to tell these stories, we need to understand the patterns and trends in these complicated processes. But more importantly than that, we need structured data. So my ask to Parliament and to every agency is to understand the difference between information and structured data. This is some structured data. This is something that we can ask questions to, and the data can answer back. Now, if I want to know about crime in Georgia over the last several years and the patterns of crime, if I get a pile of PDFs, I'm going to have to spend roughly years transcribing that information into a spreadsheet that then I can start to ask the questions and get the answers back. And that's an obstacle I think doesn't need to exist in the 21st century. So when I say structured data, what I mean is data in a format that will allow me to ask questions to that data and get answers back very quickly without the obstacles of having to transcribe that information into a format that will enable me to do that. So this is unstructured data. These are typical websites. The websites themselves have information, but they're not that structured all the time. We can't ask the website questions. Just because there's a list or a table on a website doesn't mean I can ask and get an answer back about, for example, the average salary of members of parliament, for example, in 2014. Right? So I can go to the Asset Declaration website, and I'm going to get a list of public officials, and those public officials, when I click on that public official's name, I'm going to get a PDF, and that PDF is going to have a lot of information in it. And I have to go down and find out where it says Member of Parliament, and look over to the right and see where the salary is, and grab that information, and then do that for every Member of Parliament for the year of 2014. And then I'm going to be able to ask some questions. For example, what is the average? And if I did that for every year, I could see, well, how does that change over time? But if it's in an unstructured format, like a PDF, that makes it incredibly difficult to ask these questions. And that makes it incredibly difficult to tell these stories. The stories that matter to you, the stories that matter to us, to everyone. Now, this was talked about today. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Talked about yesterday. But structured data, it isn't this thing that exists without context. There are rules for it. The Sunlight Foundation has developed a series of guidelines, and these guidelines are freely available, and they're very common sense. Data needs to be complete. We need to know where it comes from. We need to know that it's up to date, that it has the most relevant information now. For example, if I want to know how MPs in Georgia vote, I want to know, for example, if there was votes yesterday, who voted on the law and how did they vote. I don't want to have to wait 3 weeks to get that information because it took 3 weeks to enter that information into a database. It needs to be easy to access. Today that means using the internet, but it can take a variety of formats. It needs to be machine readable. Bless you. It needs to be machine readable, meaning that we need to be able to ask it questions and get answers. This means spreadsheets, JSON format, like Mark described, these structured data formats that are standard and open and everyone can use and access very easily. The way that this information is given needs to be non-discriminatory. What that means is that if one NGO is asking for information and you don't like that NGO and you decide not to give that NGO information, but then another NGO that you like that perhaps hasn't said anything critical about you today, you decide to give that information to them, that's discriminatory. That's not acceptable. So the mechanisms that you provide the information need to prevent that level of discrimination. And I'm going to talk about how that can happen in just a second. Now, use of commonly owned standards just means open formats. For example, JSON, CSV, spreadsheets that people can use. If you have to purchase $400 software in order to access this information, that's a barrier to the public. That's something we don't want. We need to understand how we can use this information. There needs to be a license attributed to that information. For example, if you go to data.gov.ge today, there's a wealth of information, but there's no indication on how it can be used explicitly. So we have to use that information with a grain of salt. We'll use it, but there is the chance that maybe that could change in the future because there's no explicit license on how that information could be used, reused, and made public. Lastly, permanence and usage. We need to be able to go back and find information that was posted a long time ago, archived information. Votes change, laws change, but we need to know how people voted on laws 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And finally, there should not and cannot be financial barriers or paywalls that separate the people who need information with the people who provide information. And we see this a lot and we think that it's time to work together to remove these barriers, because the benefits of removing these barriers is the economic ripple effect is far greater than any financial benefit a country can gain by just selling information. So this is where APIs come in. And I hesitated to use the word API in a presentation because it's a very technical term, application programming interface. But I'm not going to talk about explicitly what it is, but more that what it can do. And what it does is it allows us to go back, and it is the embodiment of the open data guidelines. The API allows anybody to access structured information that is constantly changing over time. And I don't know if you know this, but Parliament has an API for its MP voting records. Many people don't know that, but if you go to votes.parliament.ge, you can access the latest, most up-to-date records on how MPs have voted on every law. There is a slight delay. It is not as up-to-date as we'd like. The laws aren't added as quickly as we'd like, but it's a work in progress. And this work in progress is a relationship between JumpStart, Parliament, NDI, and Transparency International. Its existence is through this partnership because we needed this information. This information needed to exist, and we were in a position to make it happen, and Parliament was willing to open their arms and say, hey, yeah, this is important, let's make it happen. It's not without its faults, but not in so much as what it can do, but as what we learned along the way, that the technology necessary to implement the API was impeded by the technology that existed in the actual process of Parliament voting. And that's an interesting phenomenon. And it's something that I think one of the major takeaways of this discussion, that I would like to talk about further down the road, is that technology that's used to provide information to the public it's not something that an IT department just implements and then in a vacuum, and we can expect it to work out all right. For example, if you look in front of you, there's a panel for voting, and you can see where members of Parliament can vote. But you don't see a button for abstain. And the problem of the matter is that this technology was adopted from another country in which the procedures were very different from those in Georgia. And so sometimes that works out just great, but in this particular case, we see a case in which hardware actually impacts the voting process. And that affected directly what information we can make public and that we could use in a reliable way. For example, we know who voted yes and no, but we don't know, for example, whether a person was absent or did they abstain. And that's confusing. And so I think it's important that in the process of providing this information to the public, a dialogue needs to exist between civil society, Parliament, the people who can have the will and can implement the policy, and the implementers themselves, the technologists that are going to implement these processes. And that needs to start right at the get-go, right? So when technology is going to be adopted, let's have a discussion, let's have a talk, and that way, down the road, we can see how this affects the final product. What stories can we tell using APIs? Actually, it's kind of...
I think we have time.
We have time?
I mean, we have 1 minute.
1 minute? All right. So what stories can we tell using APIs? Well, I want to know, for example, how... I want to understand the relationship between what a politician promises before they get elected and then the nature of how they voted. How do their votes reflect the promises that they made? And I think that's very important for the public to understand. That should be part of the public discourse. And to be able to tell these stories is dependent upon the information in which we have access to. And so this is a whole landscape that is designed to tell stories, but it's a complicated process, it's a complicated flow. And I'd like to end this I had a lot more to say. We can talk about it afterwards, but I'd like to end on that note that in the end, the stories that we tell is dependent on the partnerships that we make. And it's important that we all reach out to each other to ensure that we are able to tell these stories, that the public is able to conduct the discourse it needs to make the decisions to improve this country, to improve all countries. And for that to happen, technologists, policymakers, and civil society really need to work together to ensure the technology meets those needs. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. Maybe at the end, if we have time, we can end up what Georgian Parliament did when it comes to that. Next, Krzysztof, if I pronounce right, good, well done, me. Madejski from Poland with his presentation, please.
Hello. Hi, I'm Chris, and this is my country, Poland. It's quite a beautiful country, amazing people live in it. I feel a part of it. And that is why, as an active citizen, I want to know what is happening in my country, how does it function, and how I can engage to make my country better. That's when I enter my country online platform of public information, where I can find tons of public data sets. For example, I want to know what's the backbone of the country, what law, what bills do we have. So I can browse it all for free. I can download it. I can see the law that it's operational and proposals both on central and local level. Then this law is created by voting, so I can see who voted in favor or against the bill I'm interested in. It's all created in the debate in the parliament, so I can search for debates to look for the topic that interests me. And that debate, even it's spanning wider. Now it starts in social media, so I can see what my politicians are speaking in social media, what they would like to implement. I can see what are the current topics in social media, what politicians, cities, NGOs are speaking about right now or were speaking about a month ago. I can see how much my municipality is spending in different categories, how much on education, how much on civil help. And I can compare it to the cities that are quite of the same size as my city, so I know if we are spending more or less than the others. I can also browse and look through all the NGOs and companies that are registered in Poland to see what's their mission, to see what are their actions. I can also browse connections between companies and people. I'm interested to work with some company to see like what's their context, who they're working with, what's really the people behind it. I can also see the tenders that these companies are realizing. And when I cannot find any information just navigating through the site, I can search for it. For example, I can search for, like, given the situation of refugees, I can search for NGOs that are tackling this issue. I can see what humanitarian aid we're providing. I can see where the topic is in public debate in parliament and social media. If I cannot find any information, I can use this platform to send requests for public information to any public institution or an NGO. And then I can share this answer with other people so they don't have to repeat the same questions. So building a big database of public information, also crowdsourced. Then it's a lot of data, it's a lot of numbers, and if I'm willing to interest my friends in the topic of parliamentary data and transparency, I showed them these visualizations. Here you can see an animated story of an MP to see how much he's spending on his office, on travel, on expertises. Does he spend? What's the maximum? What's the average of expenditure here? So it's really easy to understand for everybody. And this is our platform, my country, which in Polish we call it ePaństwo, which we've been developing for over 4 years. I've been showing mostly parliamentary data, but we have over 100 data sets. We have postal codes, railroad schedules, so on, so on. We're all the time expanding these data sets. And I must say, well, it's kind of a struggle to process all that information. And I'm joining Eric in asking you, the representatives of central and also local institutions, to know that it really would help if we have data in open formats. So then it's less struggle for a portal like us or every politician. So then we can focus on presenting this data, analyzing, visualizing, aggregating, to make it easier for understand to citizens, but also to engage citizens. So really to focus on our role as CSOs. And in the end, open data, it's only part of the puzzle of open government. Like we can provide the data, we can engage citizens, but there is a lot more elements that will be really willing to help you, but we need to cooperate together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. And from NDI Senior Manager for Technology Innovations, Chris Doten. Please, Chris, and this is your remote.
Thank you all. Yeah, Chris Doten with NDI, and we are a little bit back from the start here. Okay. Can we try again? Great. So I will have to move rather quickly here today. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and to be at a panel with such interesting technologists doing such great stuff. I'm here to tell you about a little toolkit that NDI is putting out there called DemTools. So can we jump back to the beginning? Let me begin by warning you that this is a preview. The DemTools 2.0 release, this is actually not the beginning. Thanks. The full release will be coming out in the next couple of weeks, so there you go. Great, thank you very much. So keep your eyes open for that, and we will be eager to share that with you. So, okay, there we go. So, preview. NDI works in about 60 countries around the world to work with political institutions to help improve them, make them more open and accountable to their people. I manage our technology programs team, so it's my job to work with political parties, legislatures, civil society organizations, and other groups to help them apply sensible, innovative technology to their work to do their job better and make things easier. Now, this audience understands perfectly well how the rise of internet penetration is changing the relationships among citizens and between citizens and the governed, and how, with the power of cloud technology and new social media, we are all connected in ways that were completely impossible before. So there's new mega corporations that are doing amazing things thanks to the technology. It's changing the way that we drive, sometimes the way that we date, and changing our world. But it is in the more affluent parts of the world, it's changing the relationships between governments and governed in a lot of different ways, whether it's gathering more information and publishing it out to people, or if it's creating new channels of communication between government leaders and citizens. But what I have seen in my time working with NDI and with our partners around the world is that this does not always trickle down to smaller parliaments and legislatures and to civil society organizations around the developing world. And at the end of the day, most of this comes down to money. The people with whom we work do not necessarily have the resources to afford commercial products, which may not even exist in their particular language or adapted to their cultural context. We're big proponents of open source software, and there's a lot of good stuff out there, but that too is very rarely tailored for the needs of civic organizations or for legislatures around the world. So NDI wanted to try and help solve some of these problems, and we've done so with a toolkit that we're calling DemTools for the Democracy Toolkit. We're working on 6 of the most common problems that I've seen in my time with NDI and that we tend to see globally around the world with legislatures and civil society organizations. Some of the software is developed by NDI directly, but most of it is the work of open source software developers, including mySociety and many other great organizations out there. So we end up being able to distribute the software, package it up, and make it more accessible and available to organizations in the developing world. So we like to work on translation, on user testing and focus group stuff, documentation to make information more accessible and make tools more readily usable, and accessibility for people who may have disabilities or difficulty accessing these programs. So I want to give you a very quick run-through of some of the members of this toolkit here. First off, we've got a system called CiviMP. This is based on the contact management system, CiviCRM, and customized for the needs of legislatures like Georgia or elsewhere for members of parliament to be able to track their relationships with their constituents, take cases that come in when citizens bring their problems to you, and then help track and resolve what's going on with them, communicate effectively with your citizens, and then when election time comes around again, be able to reach back out to them over email or text message and remind them of all that great work that you've been doing in the legislature here for them. We've talked a lot about open data here today and yesterday, but how do you actually do it? How do you bundle it up and how do you share it? We've got a system that we're calling Data based on some work from New Civic and their open data platform, DCAN. It's an API-compatible system with the U.S. government's data.gov and is the same platform as is used in many other countries, including Australia, the UK, and a lot of other places. Upload spreadsheets, again, structured data being the name of the game for any of this stuff. Upload spreadsheets, and you're able to do fairly rich visual narrative storytelling based off of your data, whether it's charts and graphs or maps that can kind of help illustrate the information that you're trying to share with your citizens and constituencies. It's just a great way to get information across. One group of people who love this, donors. Donors like being able to see what's going on with information. So next, there's a really exciting initiative that Scott and the governance team have been working on called PolitiFilter. It's actually, I think, in some ways similar to some of the work that ePaństwo has been doing in some aspects. As parliamentarians and other elected officials are coming online and spreading their messages over social media, PolitiFilter provides a way for, say, a political party to see what their members are saying about particular topics. PolitiFilter will pull in all the tweets that are from a particular country or region and then enable you to split them on some sort of line. Now, here we have an example where it's by gender. This is U.S. Congress splitting the results by gender, and you can see the kind of the word clouds and then the actual tweets associated with a particular topic. For example, with the Bring Back Our Girls movement in Nigeria, women tended to call out some more personal information about the city from which these girls came, to wear red in support and so on. Men were a little bit more focused on issues of national security, counterterrorism, Boko Haram, and so on. Petitions is particularly fascinating because the iChange platform here being developed here in Georgia is, like our petition system, also based off of the White House's We the People petition system. We've adapted it for an international audience. A local government or a legislature or a nation can set up a system, pull in ideas from their citizens, let people support and vote on different ideas, and then if they meet a certain threshold, then the government is suggested to then provide an official formal response to the petition. Fix My Community, product of mySociety, who's done just some tremendous work on this, is at its most basic, designed to be a find and fix potholes sort of problem, but can be more generally understood as a way of submitting and sharing any service delivery issues or other urban problems that a local government or a majoritarian member of parliament or a government might want to find about what's going on with their citizens. You can track and manage the problems that come out of that and see what trends might be emerging. And then finally, we've got a video debates platform called The Issues. This lets citizens ask questions, short questions to members of parliament or other elected officials who then respond in short 2 or 3 minute segments, creating a new channel of direct communication on issues that matter to citizens and helping politicians refine their messages and shape their platforms. It's been used in Bosnia, in Colombia, and I think particularly interestingly in Belarus, where opposition candidates are able to get around the chokehold on major media outlets. So DemTools version 1 is out there now at our GitHub repository. We encourage you to take it, fork it, play with it. It's yours. Do whatever you want. Version 2 will be coming out pretty soon. But unfortunately, we found that this is not necessarily enough to solve the problems that a lot of civil society organizations have. There's still a gap that we find in a lot of the groups with whom we work because they don't have hardcore technologists who can run this open source software on their own. So what do we have to do about that? Like, open source is great, but I like to joke that open source is free like a free puppy. The puppy may not cost very much, but you have years of care and feeding that you have to deal with afterwards. So DemCloud is our solution to that. It is a software as a service-based hosting platform that basically lets us clone any of these Dem tools as many times as we want, for as many organizations as we want, in as many countries as we want. Now, we're able to pull off that magic in a way that certainly most of my colleagues up on the platform here know, because software scales. It's hard to solve a problem once. It's a little bit harder to solve it a couple of times, but once you've solved it a few times, then it really isn't all that much harder to solve it hundreds or thousands of times after that. So NDI has to take care of these problems for ourselves anyway, and we'd really like to be able to help support other organizations to deal with this, eliminate some of the technology problems, and let the civic organizations and legislatures do their work with the people more effectively and quickly as possible. So we think we can make some magic happen together. Please contact me afterwards here if there's anything that you'd like to collaborate on, and I really look forward to hearing more from you in the future. So thank you all very much.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you all. I think it's the fascinating presentations and in time, which brings more confidence into what you do, guys. I have two questions myself. It has been mentioned yesterday that the technology cannot or maybe should not completely substitute the human contact, you have to still get there. You still touch, keep your hand on a pulse, and talk. And sometimes people, in my experience, when you tell them, okay, this is going to be anonymous, your name will not be there. No, they say, no, I want my name to be there because I bring my problem is my name, and my name comes with my problem. So don't mix me up with someone else. The other extremes. And another question maybe is, what do we do when we go in countries like Georgia, which the country I know best, when you go beyond the rural areas, when you go beyond where technology is not, and the people are not that well, or the technology mavens, you would say. So my grandparents, for example, you go beyond. So what do we do there? So these two questions, maybe Lex, you would
Sure.
With that.
So I think the two questions are talking about a similar problem in the same way, which is human beings are not computers. And so how do we create the sorts of human processes? How do you talk to people and get them comfortable with the technology? So I'll give you an example. In New York City, there were a lot of grandmothers and grandfathers who had never voted on a computer before. And so our goal, we worked with a team from Stanford in designing the first ever digital ballot for participatory budgeting first ever digital ballot for any election in New York City, and our goal was make it as simple as an ATM. Even grandparents use ATMs, so make it as simple and also have people there with the technology who are trained and who can speak Spanish or speak Chinese, speak their language, who understand the neighborhood. And so we had pairs of people, usually one person in the pair at the voting site would be more of a tech expert, and the other one would be more of a neighborhood expert. So mixing different kinds of expertise about the local community, about the technology, and being there with them to help them use it. And I think, as you say, and as Chris said, once you have 2, 3, 4, it's very easy to scale that process up, in my experience.
An incredibly important set of questions, and we could talk for another hour on that alone. But you have to think about what's the goal, what's the audience you're trying to reach. It can be perfectly okay to have a social media campaign even in a country where only 10% of the population is on social media, but that can't be the end. Like, that's where you begin perhaps, but that's not where you end. There's any thoughtful political program, and I think it's particularly important and difficult for governments because they have a responsibility to all their citizens. You need to think about women. How do they encounter technology differently? How do they have different levels of access? Marginalized communities, people with disabilities, and then most particularly the rural areas. Tbilisi is pretty well connected, but the regions not so much so. So how do you adapt your program ideas so you can tap into this technology but not isolate further people who are already pushed out to the edges?
Yeah, well, then in addition, it's not the connection itself is not that a big problem. The 3G or 4G now today in Georgia coverage there, it's the comfort level of dealing with the with this technology, the little cell phone versus the sophisticated smartphone as well.
I agree with Chris on that. I think first and foremost you have to understand your objectives and know your audience. And I don't think critical moments in which decision making is a good time to sort of funnel people through into new technologies. I think it's important to recognize the disparity and then, simultaneously, all along the way, we need to be, I think, trying to shift people to use modern technologies when they're relevant, when they're useful. But in those critical times, we have to use technologies that are relevant, that are going to be inclusive and participatory. And I think that there's a wide variety of ways to use modern technologies, but at the same time take modern ideas and then go back and use more, I think, older media to communicate or to get that interaction.
Sure. I would add to a couple of points there. I guess the civic technology sector is much more mature. It's been around for a few years now, and there's quite a few important considerations as to where it goes next as these programs begin to scale. Because I suppose with any online service, you're not just trying to prove that you can do government better. You're also competing with all of the other online services out there for attention. So, most people, their use of the internet and online services is increasingly sophisticated. They're used to an experience which is simple, relevant to them, and is easy to use and understand. And they're also very used to, if it doesn't work, they're not going to spend much time kind of learning how to kind of make use of it. They're going to move on to a different service. So as the civic technology sector matures, we've got to be able to adopt some of those techniques as well. And that's especially important. When you're at the beginning of your journey, it's perfectly fine to experiment, try lots of different things, use different technologies at different times. But then as you get ready to scale up and roll these services out to more people, that's when research becomes incredibly important to prove the efficacy of this work, to prove that it actually does what we hope it wants to. But also recognizing that success doesn't always mean millions of users. It might mean a very small difference to a very particular group as well. So it's just putting that focus on what works and you're careful to use research and so on to scale it up, and recognizing that you are competing with the wider online world and not just other civic technology services.
Yeah, I would like to add that it seems to me that the basic principle is very simple. Just that if we do such tools, we just have to test it on the users continuously. Why is Facebook so popular and good? Because they test every single feature so extensively. Why Google is so good? Because they test everything all the time. And it seems to me very simple way. It's just test it all the time on the users. Why the laws are so complicated and nobody understands the laws? Because they are done by the lawyers, for the lawyers. And they are not tested on the users at all, on the people. or at least very, very often it's the way. So it seems to me that, well, the way how to do it, how to connect the word of parliament and the word of people, it's again simple. Just test it, and learn from the testing.
Yeah, I would like to stress one issue which is perceived kind of a problem in Poland, that we really, whether we engage people in real meetings or online, we need feedback loops. So if I'm reporting a problem, I would like this problem to be acknowledged, I would like to be updated on the discussion, then I would like to be updated on the solution. In the end, I want to comment if my problem was really solved. And this, well, we have this kind of problem like in online tools, in public consultations, in discussing about budget, that we're just reporting and it's going into this like hole, and we don't know if it's anything happening with issues that we are raising.
Okay, understood. Well, thank you for your comments. We will have 5-6 minutes for the questions if you have. Laura on top, and then Natalia, please. And identify yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Laura from NDI, Georgia. This was such an interesting panel to me. Thank you so much for all of your presentations. They were incredible. One challenge, of course, that we encounter in NDI's efforts, along with some of the people up here that we've collaborated with, is strong resistance, perhaps out of fear or just regular discomfort from elected representatives to embrace these new efforts, despite endless explanations on how it would make it better for them, and importantly, to translate into why it's politically savvy for them to do so, because it can translate into better voting outcomes. So it's really to any of you or all of you is, in your engagement, because you talk about engaging with elected representatives, what are some of the sort of successful convincing techniques that you've used to get parliaments, legislators on board to embrace some of these ideas, whether it's quick polling or setting up a constituent database? It's something I'd really like to hear. Thank you so much.
Natalia?
Good morning. I'm Natalia from Belarus. I have a question to Mr. Paulson. I wonder, this mathematical model of D21, does it have quantitative limitations? So what happens if it's not 6 people voting, but let's say 4 people or 1,000 people voting? Or if the number of options is not 6, but let's say 25 or something, should it be changed to D52 or something? Thank you.
And the last question from the bunch, please.
Yes, I'm Cristiano Ferri from the Hacker Lab in the Brazilian Chamber of Deputies. I really want to congratulate you for this panel. It was brilliant. I feel myself very inspired for the tools you guys developed. But I would like to ask you, and I have this problem, you may have as well. So I know it's very hard to develop nice tools as you did, but I think we have an even harder problem. How to reach people, to let them know that you have a brilliant tool, and how to engage them, because we have so many good stuff around, and we are competing for having an audience, right? And so I'd like to listen from you, from your experience, how you are dealing with this problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's start with the D21 and then
factual
the rest.
question.
Yes, the factual question.
It's a very good question. So the idea is the algorithm will adjust for the size of the options, the number of winners that you want. So it can be D52, it can be D73. And I'll give you an example. So in Tunisia, we didn't know how many projects would be proposed in the participatory budgeting session, but we knew there were going to be 3 winners. And so in that case, we recommended that the ballot have 6 votes, 6 plus votes, and there would be no minus votes because they didn't want to have minus votes. So it's a customizable algorithm that can change for all the different circumstances, the number of options, the number of winners, and whether or not they want a minus vote. So it's flexible. And maybe I can say something to Laura's question as well about the political challenges. I find as someone who's worked in legislatures that peer pressure is a fantastic engine to get politicians to adopt. There's no more effective and convincing moment in a politician's life when they think they're falling behind other politicians. And so I think a big challenge or a strategy we've used is, where are the early adopters? If you can find just a couple of early adopters and really show that they have politically benefited from this, and it could be the person who uses Facebook or Twitter, find a couple of early adopters and then try to compare them with their colleagues. And I find that peer pressure among politicians is a big key for us.
Yes, and then probably have to overcome the idea that MP knows everything. That he's sure and absolutely confident that he doesn't need to talk and communicate in any formal matter, whether live or through the any digits, that he knows. Why would he ask and waste his time on this? And there was a good, interesting question about the how to outreach, how to get this idea and about that one, and plus other questions.
Yeah, so on the finding the audience question, if you take something like They Work For You, one of the most important things that we do on those services is to make sure it works really well with search engine marketing so that it comes high up in results when you search in Google and so on. With They Work For You, which is kind of parliamentary monitoring, or Alla Vitelli, which is our Freedom of Information website, you want those questions to make sure they come high up in the rankings so that when people are generally searching for why does my government do this, or what does my government do in this situation, they're going to find the answers to those questions high up in the search results. So that's kind of what I was referring to with you're competing with all these other online services or all these other potential sources of information. And not only does that become incredibly useful for distributing the answers, it also, to Michal's point about testing, you're understanding where people come into the site, how long they stay there, the paths that they use to go through these different applications and so on. That's an incredibly important part of kind of optimizing and improving the software over time. And it's also recognizing that what works in one country won't necessarily directly translate to another country. So the testing and the optimization needs to be carried out by each individual partner in each country as well. So I think there's a number of different techniques in there, but I think you get the kind of general idea.
Please.
Well, I would like to add to this discussion that I think it's good to learn from successful businesses. That, okay, if you have a look at Coca-Cola, they have some good product which is required by the people. It tastes good. They have great promotion, and well, it works for them. So well, it should work for us as well. And so just learn from Google, learn from Facebook how they do it, learn from Coca-Cola how they do it, or from any successful business.
Yes, Chris.
Also, direction we are going with My Country platform since a year is to engage different CSOs around Poland to engage their network. So, for example, we have functionality to monitor your local council, the debates, voting, and so on. So you can upload, cut videos of the sessions, register voting, and so on. And we cooperate with different watchdogs all around Poland to provide us with that information. So that we're giving them a tool and they're engaging their local community, like with watchdogs or with some other organization to use other tools. So we're building tools for them and rely on them engaging their networks, their communities.
Well, yes, please.
So, to Chris, your point there also, I think that the question is an important one because we should step back and sometimes ask, should we actually be doing this to begin with? I think as civic technologists, we have kind of a virtuous sense that we're going to build the right things, they're going to be free and open source, and they're going to get out there, they're going to change the world, and just like that shining vision on its own will sell it to the masses. But sometimes that doesn't happen, and for me, one good example, I work a lot with digital security, net freedom groups. Many of them are funded in the same sort of way. Dozens of circumvention systems out there, open source, beautifully done. None of them are in the top 10 of ones that people actually use. And so sometimes we maybe need to actually get out of the way, work with the existing technology, the big boys out there, help them shape their products, tweak them a little bit. If Google shifts like 1 degree to make its products more suitable for the people that we really care about, then it will impact millions of people beyond the hope that I would ever have to reach.
I would add to that. I agree. If you build it, they won't necessarily come. And I think one of the things that makes, I think, our work so successful in Georgia is that we focus on the story, and then oftentimes we realize that the data we need or the mechanism to get that data, it doesn't exist, and so we build that. And so we build the tools for the stories themselves. And generally, for us, that seems to be a recipe for success, because then it's used. For example, we built an API for currency exchange rates that didn't exist in the country. And over the last year, the lari is devalued over 30%, which is interesting, but yet very boring. But then we built on top of that a cool calculator that allows people to see how much money they've lost by doing nothing. And it became very, very popular, and it's very interactive, it's engaging, it's sort of like gamified the exchange rates. And that became a story in and of itself that was republished by other media. And I think that, sometimes you got to think about what the story is.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I was lucky to moderate. It's probably the most interesting panel. Yeah, maybe last question then, because people will, I'm depriving people from another injection of caffeine. So,
thank you very much. I'm trying for the last 2 days to get to the comment, and finally I achieved it. Thank you very much. I'm Vidor from Transparency International Slovenia, from the country which is not an OGP member, unfortunately. But what I want to stress out is, which is going to be basically a general comment on the conference as such, and also in connection with the tech, with the usability of IT tools, which we are talking about today. This is really crucial when we talk about where the future is going to go in regards to transparency of government, of decision-making process, and so on and so forth. What I want to highlight is we mainly discussed yesterday about the openness of the parliament as such, and today how they use the tech in regards to that. I want to highlight maybe a thing which was a little bit neglected, which is the holistic approach, and to see the big picture of the use of technology, and to see the big picture of what the transparency means in regards to the legislative process. The Transparency International Slovenia, together with the partners, we try to present an IT tool which is called the Legislative Monitor, which we want to show the entire legislative path, legislative footprint. What we mean with that is basically from the start, legislative footprint from the first proposal through legislative process in the parliament, enriched with reported lobbying contacts, and to show all this to the public. At the moment, we've been able to show the publicly accessible information, which are publicly accessible through the National Assembly's webpage in Slovenia, of course, and to show it in a much more user-friendly way. And we hope we'll be able to update that with all the information and all the databases which the government holds. So basically, you'll be able to see in a timely manner how the specific law or the decision which is being made through the entire process is being made. And what I want to emphasize here is every time when we are doing with an IT tools, we have to take into account that the entire system and how the government and how our state is dealing with IT system, what kind of databases they use it. And when we are dealing with IT systems, we need to have the broader picture into account, because when we don't want that our IT tools and our work is going to be neglected and to be forgotten in a couple of years because it will be too old to use. We want to use the IT tool which will be able to show a broader picture, a broader input into the what we want to show. Basically, what we want to achieve with our tool as well is how the adopted laws are being implemented in practice through the court's decisions. We'll be able to see, hopefully, in the next couple of years, how a specific law through the specific articles basically is being implemented into practice through sanctionings of the inspection organs and so on and so forth. And I think we really need to strive to that direction in order to achieve this transparency, what we really mean as transparency as a whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's a very good point. I could have keep up talking about that point actually myself, but not this time. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, panelists. And we'll continue at 11, and please be back by 11. Thank you. Thank you, guys. I think it was really...
That was the most visually rich slideshow I've ever seen in my entire life.
I go a little bit insane sometimes.
It was really cool. Do you have like a...
Yeah. Yeah, I ended up going with a different unit part because it was higher resolution.
Thank you.